I have miles and miles ahead of me, tales to listen to, time to spend. Up ahead, the road is bending. Wonder what's around the bend.
Hello, I'm Charles Kuralt. We're off again to meet a few people on the back roads of America. These are people you know, not from the front pages. They've never been on the front pages. They're people you know from next door and down the block. Their stories are some of my favorites from 25 years on the road.
Here's Tom Noddy blowing a bubble.
I do bubbles inside of bubbles, smoke bubbles, clear bubbles inside of smoke bubbles, caterpillar bubbles, love bubbles, and a bubble cube.
He's forever blowing bubbles. He makes a living at it.
This stove, just with this junk meal alone, I can get the temperature in this house up to 80 degrees.
That's Bill Conklin. He found a use for junk mail. He heats his house with it.
I literally came here about this time of the year and took off all my clothes, everything, and I just walked in.
Tom Brown clothed and fed and sheltered himself for a year alone, just with what he found in the woods.
You're basically able to fulfill your dreams, and you can do it in the United States. You really can.
His name is Shawwali Abdi. Yesterday, the 4th of July, he became a citizen of the United States. He has degrees in biology and science research, and an American dream of his own.
I like to become famous. I think it's really neat, you know. This is a good country to become famous in.
I spent yesterday, the 4th of July, at Mr. Jefferson's house in Virginia. Jefferson died on the 4th, 50 years to the day after his Declaration of Independence was read to the world, and somebody had put roses on his grave. On his front lawn, 97 people of 28 nationalities were about to become citizens of the country he declared free for us and them. Pick one of them from the crowd to see what sort of citizen we gained yesterday. Shawwali Abdi, 29 years old, of Afghanistan. Are you excited too?
Very much so, yeah. I've been smiling all day and all weekend.
If you think you had a full holiday weekend, consider his. To begin with, on Friday, he was married.
For richer, for poorer.
For richer, for poor.
In sickness and in health.
In sickness and in health.
Wali, raised a Muslim, stood there in the old Price Fork United Methodist Church in Blacksburg, Virginia, and was married to Angela Marie Surface Cooper, daughter of a good Montgomery County Methodist family. She is also the mother of 3 children, so just to start the weekend, Wali Abdi became both a husband and a father. Naturally, that was on the mind of our new citizen even before he became a citizen.
These children mean a lot to me. I think for me the best way to give it back to the United States is to help my wife, Angela, raise these children, to become decent citizens, to become decent people, and they will do in turn their share of contribution to the country.
So there was the happiness of Angela and the children, but this was a complicated weekend. His thoughts also turned back to the family he left behind in Afghanistan.
I never forget that moment when I was at the airport. I hugged my father and the tears rolled down my eyes, you know. I never forget. I really never forget that day. I think the sad part was that when I got in the airplane, I didn't know. I didn't know whether I could come back.
He hasn't gone back for 9 years, and as long as the Russian troops are in Afghanistan, he won't. He'll stay in Blacksburg studying for his PhD at Virginia Tech, an educational researcher and teacher working hard. He had papers to grade yesterday, but he had to put that off. He had a date at Monticello. Yesterday, he and Angela settled in their places on the famous hill at Charlottesville to wait for his name to be called.
Shah Wali Abdi.
With his old passport and his new marriage certificate in his hand, he attended to one last little bit of American bureaucracy.
Good morning, sir. I'm fine. How are you?
Traffic violation?
Yeah, I had three speeding tickets, and I paid them.
Okay. 2 speeding. Okay. And have you been married since your
I'm married on Friday.
Friday?
With nothing to mar his record but 3 speeding tickets, he was approved for citizenship for the final time, along with the other men and women with foreign-sounding names.
Errol Dursun Dogane.
And what he said, they all must have been thinking.
I feel very happy. I really feel it. I feel it in my heart.
How you cross?
There are a lot of people who don't know, I guess, how important it is to be an American, because they're born here, they grew up with it, and they take it for granted.
I hereby declare on oath.
He raised his right hand with the others and said a few words about renouncing every foreign prince, potentate, state, and sovereignty.
So help me God.
And the last vow of his long weekend was taken, and Wali Abdi became Wally, which his American friends have called him all along.
You have just become a citizen of the greatest country the world has ever known. This is true not because
Thomas Jefferson, as president, proposed that the United States offer hospitality and asylum to those he called oppressed humanity, unhappy fugitives from distress. I imagine that Mr. Jefferson, knowing what's going on in Afghanistan and knowing Wali Abdi as a scholar like him, would have approved of the proceedings on his lawn yesterday. 97 people from 28 countries became citizens of the United States. I got to know this one. The 4th of July made me proud for him. Proud for us, too. Tom Noddy blows bubbles. Bubbles trail away from him wherever he goes, in whatever breeze that blows. He is a wandering minstrel, and bubbles are his song. As bubbles floated for an instant around us before vanishing forever, he invited me inside, out of the wind, into San Francisco's delightful science museum, the Exploratorium, to show me what he can do with soap and air.
Well, I do bubbles inside of bubbles, smoke bubbles, clear bubbles inside of smoke bubbles inside of clear bubbles, inside out bubbles, yin-yang bubbles, caterpillar bubbles, love bubbles, and a bubble cube.
With such airy fantasies, Tom Noddy has lifted bubble blowing far above any playground pursuit. He calls this the carousel bubble. Watch. When he blows bubbles for kids, Tom Noddy always tells them not to smoke. Unfortunately, he has to smoke, else he couldn't blow smoke bubbles.
A clear bubble with a bubble full of smoke inside it.
He has learned how to build geometric bubbles within bubbles within bubbles, triangle bubbles, cube bubbles, dodecahedron bubbles even.
Dodecahedron.
A dodecahedron, huh?
Right.
It
12
is jewel-like.
Uh-huh.
It's beautiful. Isn't it a pity it can't last?
Oh, that's the best part. That's what makes them precious, right?
What is it that's so appealing about them, exactly?
Well, they're certainly beautiful. The colors on them are intense, the shine on them. But liquid spheres, there's something about this apparent solid, which spheres are. They remind us of apples and balls. But in fact, they're liquids. They move like a liquid. They're infinitely flexible. They can do things that a solid just couldn't do, right? I think that's a large part of the appeal, and their transient nature. And everybody seems to like it. I've never done a bad bubble show. I've never blown an ugly bubble. Right? It's hard to do.
Oh. This he calls Galactica, a universe of bubbles within a bubble.
Can you make a living blowing bubbles?
If you call this living. I've supported myself as a hippie. I mean, I had no money. I lived in my van. I had no address that I had, you know, and I just traveled around. Living cheap, living minimally, like the bubbles, you know, minimal surface structures, economy of form, allowed me to make my living off of bubbles for nearly 12 years now.
Tom Noddy feels that he has only begun to probe the outer limits of the bubble universe. He's creating bubbles ever more intricate, ever more enchanting. Tom Noddy has chosen to live the life of a wandering troubadour, here today, gone tomorrow. His bubbles are transient, like him. Of course, all bubbles burst, but in the philosophy of Tom Noddy, once it has quivered in the air for even an instant, a thing of beauty is a joy forever.
We have noticed that Yankee ingenuity still abounds in the land. Hand certain Americans a lemon and they'll make lemonade. Tell some Americans life is a can of worms, and they'll can up some worms and sell them at a profit. And if you send Americans enough junk mail, sooner or later, one of them is going to figure out what to do with that, too.
Mailman town.
The mailman who delivers the mail to Bill Conklin's house in Denver is always very glad to get there, because when he gets there, his bag gets lighter. Bill Conklin receives a lot of junk mail. Most people hate junk mail. Bill Conklin depends on it. He heats his house with junk mail. Well, think about it. Free fuel, free delivery. All he has to do is ask for it.
Well, I had to get myself onto all kinds of junk mail lists to increase the amount of junk mail. So what I did is I would order things using different names other than my own, so that the computer would pop me on the same junk mail list twice. Okay, so now I get junk mail from the same companies. And so I'll get 2, 3, sometimes 4 of the same item, so that I quadrupled the amount of junk mail I get.
He doesn't just throw it into the stove by the fistful. There's a technique to everything. He tries to use to good advantage every giveaway, every discount coupon, every order blank. After all, these people went to a lot of trouble to fill these envelopes, and he wants to get the most out of them.
I generally sort the stuff as I go, just as when I was a Boy Scout. And I pile it in a little teepee around all the newspaper, and it makes it burn really well. The best kind of envelope to burn on the newspaper is an envelope that weighs about 2 ounces. And generally what I found is that a 2-ounce envelope has at least 5 pieces of paper inside of it. I think this is about a 2-ounce envelope. I could take a look at it here. Let's see what it's got inside of it. It's got that's a double piece of paper. That's an awful lot of paper, see? And then it's got this sheet of paper, and then it's got a card in it, and another envelope to return, for return mail. So you basically got 4 chunks of paper there. If that were mailed out first class, that thing would cost 37 cents to mail. But it's a good size for getting the fire going.
So the mailman brings the kindling and the good slow-burning logs, cattle logs, and matches, leather bellows, and iron stove do the rest. In a cold climate like Denver's, man cannot heat by junk mail alone. Bill Conklin has a gas furnace down in the cellar as a backup, but he figures he saves $30 a month in fuel bills, maybe more around the holidays when the catalogs are thickest.
I'll wait a second, then I'll put some more on. This stove, just with this junk mail alone, I can get the temperature in this house up to 80 degrees in about half an hour or so.
When chilly dusk comes to Denver, a curl of white smoke rises from Bill Conklin's chimney. The house is warm from the gentle crackle of come-ons and brochures. And seated beside his hearth, Bill Conklin is a satisfied man.
All these different companies around the world pay for heating my home. And that's a nice advantage to get, you know. There's so many things that we have to pay for nowadays. It's nice to get something for nothing once in a while.
I went for a walk deep in the pine barrens of New Jersey with a young man named Tom Brown. I thought of an old man named Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau wrote more than a century ago, "The civilized man has the habits of the house. His house is a prison." Our life is frittered away by detail, Thoreau wrote. Simplify, simplify.
How long could you live in a place like this with no tools?
Endlessly. I did it down in the Pine Barrens here for an entire year and 3 months of my life. I literally came here about this time of the year about 10 years ago, and took off all my clothes, everything, knife, and I just walked in.
Oh, where did he come from?
He's just sitting here on a trail. This is one of the rarest snakes right now in the Pine Barrens. It's a pine snake. And because the Pine Barrens are getting more and more destroyed, they're losing habitat. And this snake, look how beautiful. Look at how beautiful he is. White, black spots, they used to be all over down here. Non-poisonous, they eat rodents and things like that. And they like to live in along riverbanks. Okay, we're not gonna hurt you. We're not gonna hurt you. Now he's, like a lot of king snakes, eats rodents, sometimes he'll even eat other snakes. I'm not gonna hurt you. Now he's calming down. Okay. I'm not gonna hurt you. Keep talking to him. Now I'm gonna let him go. I don't really like to disturb these guys. Isn't he beautiful? He's gotta be 6.5 feet long.
These pine barrens were named that because someone thought they couldn't maintain much life. But I learned from Tom Brown that there is life everywhere here. Some of it very elusive, some of it very small. But there are volumes about life here, if you know how to read them. Tracking, Tom Brown says, is more than following a trail. It is reading segments of life. I went to the woods, Thoreau wrote, because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived.
Well, time to say goodbye until our next trip together. We've heard about a story up the road here, but we kind of hope we never get there. With luck, we'll stumble upon something more interesting along the way. I can see the road is bending. Wonder what's around the bend.
All these years I've been a-wondering, just when I think I'm near the end, I always see the road is bending, and I wonder what's around